Let's stay with Eskom, but move to Parliament. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts continuing its probe into corruption at the power utility. Yesterday, the country's top law enforcement bodies appeared. Today, Scopa heard from the Power Utility Board, including former board chair Malek Makgoba. Now, he slammed security officials for basically being asleep at the wheel while Eskom was being looted. Makgoba also saying today that former CEO Andre de Ruyter did tell him about his private investigation into the parastatal conducted by former police commissioner George Fivers. Of course, you'll remember that Andre de Ruyter's allegations of senior political involvement in some of the criminal networks operating around the power utility brought this matter into sharp focus. He, of course, appeared as well at Scopa recently, but he declined to name the politicians he believes are involved. Well, I'm joined now by the Special Investigating Unit Head, Advocate Andy Mothibi. Advocate, thank you so much for your time. Very sharp words from the former Eskom board chair today at Scopa, pretty much saying that the reason this private investigation went ahead is because law enforcement was just not actively doing much about it. What's your response to his criticism?
No, Sally, thank you very much for this opportunity. Yes, we did hear the former Scopa chair say that, but he did qualify his comment and said it's not that the law enforcement agencies did not do anything. He said it took rather long for the law enforcement agencies to investigate. And he specifically referred to the SAPS and the Hawks. So, yeah, at this stage, we're at the stage where, I mean, the SAPS and the Hawks appeared yesterday, and I would rather really not speak on their behalf, so that if you get the opportunity, you can reach out to them. But they did really present to the Scopa the matters which they were investigating, some of whom were referred to them by the Special Investigating Unit, and the number of arrests that have been made already, and some matters that are in court already. So there is some traction. There is evidence that was presented yesterday, but of course, the concern was raised about the speed at which the investigations are conducted.
Yeah, I mean, I think his words were fairly harsh. As you say, he was directing them specifically at SAPS and the Hawks, and you're from the SIU. But he basically said that if prompt action had been taken, we wouldn't be sitting in this kind of problem that we have today. But nonetheless, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the SIU's work and how you work together with the Hawks and the police around Eskom.
Right, thank you so much for that. Look, our mandate, of course, is to focus on corruption, yes, that has been committed at Eskom, but we also focus on maladministration, which is not necessarily a criminal offense. We also focus on malpractice in terms of our legislation. We've got the mandate to investigate serious maladministration, malpractice, and corruption, and of course other instances that would harm the public interest. And that's why, if you followed our presentation, we really went far and wide to cover our mandate. We covered instances like conflict of interest, where a number of Eskom employees, to the number exceeding 5,000, that were found to really have either not declared their interest in doing business with the company, or they really just had the actual conflict of interest. So, and as you know, that is really, and that's our experience, where things would start, where employees of the company or of Eskom in this regard would have companies outside and do business with Eskom. So ordinarily, where matters arise inside the company, where they would need attention, would not really receive appropriate attention so that their companies could benefit. So we have identified all of that in areas such as coal transportation the collusion that we have seen. We've also identified those in the diesel procurement. We've identified also in other IT systems procurement. So all of those. Now, how we work together is that when we find evidence pointing to criminal action by either a member of the public company or employee of Eskom, by the legislation that regulates our business, we have to refer that to NPA. And NPA ultimately either makes a decision to prosecute or send it further to Hawks so that they can now take that further. And that's how we get involved in assisting the Hawks and, of course, ensure that ultimately evidence is provided for NPA to make a decision either to prosecute or not to prosecute.
I hear you. So in following the money and the problems with the money, that's often a really crucial way to get to the heart of the rot. So it's a really excellent starting point. And you've explained how the other players also have to come in and do different probes on different levels. But I have to ask you, you know, the reason this has really come front and centre, because we've known about corruption at Eskom for a number of years. I mean, it was in the state capture report, and we know that there are problems, is because of these allegations by Andre de Ruyter, among other allegations, that there were, in his view, senior political figures in the ANC involved in this corruption. Is this something you would never have come across because you were simply following the money? Or is this something that you became aware of, a potential political link into some of the maladministration, some of the problems you were seeing at Eskom?
Right. I'm glad you also touched on the recoveries, and that's really mainly what SIU does effectively from end to end. In that regard, we don't hand over our findings to anyone. If we find that a particular contract was entered into irregularly, we start off by going to court, or these days, since the president proclaimed the special tribunal, we go directly to special tribunal. And the special tribunal has really shown that it speedily adjudicates on these matters. To that end, we've had contracts in the coal environment at SIU, one contract to the value of 3.7 billion, which was set aside, and the recoveries are continuing. But now, you know, on the allegations by Mr. Andre de Ruyter, which we also listened to when he was interviewed on eNCA, it is our duty, because we also investigate corruption. So, and to that extent, I specifically instructed the investigating team to reach out, and they did reach out. They showed me the trail of text messages that they sent to him, and he did not respond. Yesterday, the Hawks also indicated that you know, they followed through, but as you have heard, that they became aware, and there were some interactions in their space, and I think they can really talk better on that. But in our investigations, now, as we put it to the parliament and to public, is that we would ordinarily have expected that Mr. de Ruyter would have raised these matters either with us as SIU or with the Hawks or with the SAPS. It turns out that he said he has raised it with the SAPS, and the National Commissioner confirmed having met with him. So on the SIU side, while we continuing with these massive investigations, we started our investigations in a proclamation starting back in 2002, and that one has been completed. The report has been submitted. There's another proclamation of 2018, of 2020, and of 2022. You know, surprisingly, that all these issues keep on sort of coming up, repeating themselves, and that's why one could say corruption at SIU is at Eskom it's really endemic.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
really endemic. So all we are saying is that having noted these issues, back in 2002 and presenting a report, and now they're coming up in a proclamation of 2018 and coming up in 2020. So this, it just shows
it's
that
massive.
It's massive, and it has not really been dealt with effectively, despite
I hear you. I've got to. Yeah, so I mean, I think you're quite, it's important to understand the massive scope of corruption, because it shows just how difficult it is to really root it out when it's endemic like that. But I do have to push you very quickly, because we don't have much time. In the course of work of the SIU, doing the probes you have, the work you've done to really try and root out the rot, has there been any indication of a potential link to any high-placed politician? Yes or no? Simple.
Look, in our investigation, at some point, and this is the matter that that is now at court, I think a mining scenario where we found that there's about 3.5 billion that has been, sorry, this 3.7 contract that has been set aside. In another one, I think worth 3.5 billion, we are at court with the previous minister of, I think, Mineral and Energy, Minister Mosebenzi Zwane, and it's public. That's why I'm stating
Do you
his
think
name.
that's who Andre de Ruyter was referring to?
Well, we don't know who Andre de Ruyter was referring to. It's incumbent on him. It's really incumbent on him to come out and say who is he referring to, rather than just indicating that there is some political figure. So where we sit, he has not mentioned that to the SIU. And yesterday, the police and the Hawks indicated that they are not at this stage investigating any political figure, and I'm sure they can confirm that themselves. So all we are saying is that Andre de Ruyter, it's incumbent on him, in accordance with the legislation that enjoins him to report corruption, that he must report it in so many words and name this person or persons.
And I want to thank you for your time this evening, making important points. I also have to note, in closing, Daily Maverick is saying that they have got a response from Andre de Ruyter via text message yesterday. And he said in these texts that the police, the Hawks, were given all the information in the intelligence files. This is the FIVUS information. But so was Nat Joints, the Eskom board, Pravin Gordhan, basically everyone involved. But Andy Mothibi's point is, please tell us which politicians you were referring to so we can go after them and see if there's anything there. SIU head advocate Andy Mothibi, thank you so much for your time. Still ahead on